and thank you for joining us for this presentation about the fentanyl epidemic. I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Holly Kofer. I am the district and high school nurse for Clyde CISD. This presentation is not something that's required by the state or the government or even the school. This is something that I feel very strongly about and feel like this is something that our students, our community, and us as parents need to be educated about. What is fentanyl? Some of y'all have maybe heard of fentanyl, but not sure what it was, or some may have never heard of fentanyl at all. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. An opioid is a pain medication, like morphine. Morphine is a non-synthetic, meaning that it comes from the opium plant. Fentanyl is synthetic, meaning that it was made in a lab. Fentanyl is very similar to morphine, but it's actually about 50 to 100 times stronger. This picture right here next to the penny, it has that little bit of powder. That is actually a lethal dose of fentanyl. So when fentanyl is prescribed by a physician, it's used in patients that are in hospice, cancer patients, patients that can't get pain relief any other way, or patients that are in the hospital after an operation. I used to give this in the hospital post-operatively, give it through an IV, and it's FDA approved. We know exactly how much we're giving. It can be used as a patch that's changed every few days. That's more common in patients that may be cancer patients or hospice patients. It can be made into a lozenge. Same thing, it's a little bit more common in hospice and cancer patients, or it can be given through an IV. So fentanyl is a really strong medication. Even when it's prescribed by a physician, it just takes a very small amount to help control pain. So drug dealers from Mexico, Canada, and China started seeing this. About 2013 is when we started seeing those numbers go up. So they realized, hey, it just takes a really small amount of this drug, a drug that can be made in a lab, to cause that euphoric feeling or that high feeling. And so it started being laced into street drugs like heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine initially. The reason is because it was so cheap to make and took such a small amount that the cartels were going to be making more money with it. Then we started seeing illicit or counterfeit pills. So prescription pills that were sold illegally, such as hydrocodone, oxycodone, Xanax, Adderall. Again, these drug cartels or these drug dealers said, hey, instead of spending our money on oxycodone, we can just use a tiny bit of fentanyl and make it look like an oxycodone. No one will ever know. So these are called counterfeit pills. So they're pills basically that are made to look exactly like the most common prescription pills that are bought for illicit use, but really they're not those pills. They may have a little bit of that substance, or they may have none of that substance, but they have fentanyl in them. As I said before, fentanyl is really strong, and when we're giving it in the hospital setting or in a medical setting, we know that the FDA has cleared it. We know that the exact amount that we're administering, the exact amount that's in that patch or lozenge. But when it's being made and put into pills or illicit drugs, the cartel or drug dealers, whoever is making these pills, they're not counting exactly how much. They're not measuring how much fentanyl is in each pill. One pill could have a tiny amount, and the next could have a lethal dose, especially because it takes such a small amount to cause someone to die with. So this kind of just puts it in perspective here. This is a picture of 4 different vials. The first vial is tramadol. It's a class 4 prescription medication. It's a pain medication. It's pretty commonly given after any kind of surgeries or with chronic pain. It's also used illicitly in people that are using it for that euphoric feeling. So that vial is almost completely full. That is a fatal dose of tramadol. The next vial we see is heroin, which is an illicit drug. That's a fatal dose of heroin. The next one is oxycodone, which is a class 2 medication. It's a prescription medication, but it's also a medication that is used illicitly. That's the fatal dose for that. And then you have fentanyl. And you don't see much in that vial there because it only takes about 2 grams to kill the average person. So this talks a little bit more about those pills that we were discussing. So counterfeit prescription drugs. So basically, like I said, they're fake drugs. And unfortunately, it's very common for high school, junior high, and college students, young adults, to buy Adderall and use it as like a study drug to help them stay up, or Xanax to help them relax. Those are very common. However, what's happening is that these teenagers or college students or young adults that are purchasing these pills, they don't realize that they're not real pills. They're not really Adderall. Instead, they're fentanyl. And then they take it and they die. DEA has a campaign right now against fentanyl, and it's called One Pill Can Kill. And that's the reason it's called that. It's called that because literally you can take one pill and not wake up again. So some of the most common counterfeit pills that students purchase or use that we know about are oxycodone, hydrocodone, Xanax, or Adderall. This right here is some pictures. On the left-hand side, these are authentic oxycodone, Xanax, and Adderall. You compare them to the right-hand side, which is counterfeit oxycodone, Xanax, Adderall. You really cannot tell a difference between them. I'm pretty sure if I had them both in my hand, I don't know if I could tell you which one was the real one and which one was counterfeit. This has been difficult in the medical world because we use pill identifiers, whether it's software on the computer or pill identifier books. We look at shape, color, and imprint to identify pills. Well, these counterfeit pills have all of those same things. So the only way I would truly know if one was counterfeit would be to test it. Fentanyl testing strips are used in several other states, but in Texas, they're actually illegal. They are considered drug paraphernalia in Texas. There are several groups that are working on trying to change that, but as of now, it is illegal to buy and use fentanyl testing strips in Texas. So one of the most worrisome and scariest trends right now going on with a lot of teenagers and young adults across Texas, across the United States, is vaping. I know in Clyde, particularly, just because I've seen it firsthand, I know how hard our schools are working on trying to stop the vapes. We have vape sensors in the bathrooms. We try to stay on top of it. We educate these students about the dangers and what can happen with vaping and what happens to your lungs and your body and all of these things. And I know that our school is trying to do the best they can to combat it, along with all other schools in Texas and the United States. When vapes first came out, we thought that they were much safer. They were advertised as being much safer than smoking. So a lot of people started vaping. After a few years of vapes being out, we began to see the effects, the popcorn lung, the prolonged respiratory effects. We saw batteries of vapes blowing up and burning people, many things. And we know that the joules of nicotine, it's 20 times more than a pack of cigarettes. So we know these things, but we still don't know the full effect of vapes because they haven't been around long enough. We only know what we've seen happen so far. So even scarier now, there has been THC jewels, or the cartridges for vapes, found across the United States laced with fentanyl. Again, the people using that are not aware that fentanyl is in it, and it's done for the same reason. Our students that are vaping are not walking next door to the convenience store and buying these vape cartridges legally. Most of them aren't 18. That's not what they're doing. They're buying them from somebody else. And then also the ones using THC or marijuana, that's not legal in Texas. So they're not going to the store buying that. They're buying it from someone else. This puts them at risk for obtaining a jewel that possibly has fentanyl in it. And the other problem is we don't really know how severe the effects of vaporized fentanyl are. Fentanyl is odorless and tasteless. So I can't just walk by and smell it and say, oh, there's fentanyl in that. No, that's why it's so hard to figure out. And again, that's where those test strips come into play, that they would be helpful. There's been a few incidences in schools of vapes with THC laced with fentanyl found. One in particular is in Tennessee. There was a high school student that got caught with a vape by a teacher, and he got mad and threw the vape down and ran. When he threw it down, the school nurse and 2 school resource officers went to go pick it up and all of that. And all 3 of those people, the nurse and both the officers, went unconscious. Narcan had to be used on all 3 of them. Narcan is an opioid antagonist. It reverses the effects of opioids. So if someone is suspected to have an opioid overdose, they're unconscious, heart rate is slowing down, breathing is slowing down, Narcan is administered to reverse that. So as I said, we don't know the full effects of the vaporized fentanyl, but we know when things like 3 adults go unconscious, that's scary to us because we don't know how it's affecting those around us. And we want to try to get it out of our schools and make sure that our students are safe because they don't know about it either. So how does Texas stand in these overdose statistics? So this first graph right here, this line on the bottom, this dark blue line, if you look at it, that's fentanyl. It's pretty even until about 2013. Then that line starts to rise. Then you see a sharp increase. This map right here only goes to 2017. We know that now we're in 2022, the last 12 months, which is October to October, there have been more than 106,000 Americans die from fentanyl overdose or fentanyl poisoning. Over 106,000. So that's not including those that maybe overdosed and maybe their life was saved. Maybe there was Narcan. It doesn't even include those. These are just the ones that have died. So we know in Texas, these Texas statistics are high, but we have Dallas, we have Houston, we have San Antonio. That's why these statistics are so high, right? Really not a problem around here. Well, all these headlines are from close to here. So this one right here, 5 people dead from suspected drug overdose. This was in Abilene. This was May of 2021. There were 5 different adults found dead, not at the same place. They did not know each other. They were not at a party together, anything like that. 5 separate adults, separate incidences found dead. All 5 of them had bought an illicit pill that they did not know contained fentanyl, and they died. That was over a year ago. Move on to April of this year, April 2022. This is an article about a couple that was pulled over on Pine Street, and they ended up finding several drugs, including methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, and it was packaged and ready to sell. that fentanyl was going out in our city. This purple article right here, Rolling the Dice, Fentanyl Lace Pills. This article is about Alyssa. She was a 21-year-old that lived in Abilene. She was 6 months pregnant, and in January 2021, she took an illicit pill, unknowing that it was laced with fentanyl. And her unborn child died. Not by choice. So this article talks about 3 Texas high school students believed to have died of fentanyl overdoses. So this wasn't very long ago. This article right here is talking about 3 high school students right outside of San Marcos, in a fairly small area. That story right there is actually kind of what triggered me to say, hey, we've got to educate these kids and our community and our parents. It's getting a little too close for comfort here. So I don't know about y'all, but I know that my kids have Snapchat, and I downloaded Snapchat. I tried to make an account on Snapchat. I used it for probably less than an hour and couldn't figure it out and deleted the app. Still can't figure it out. But that is the precise reason that illicit pills are being sold more and more on social media, and particularly Snapchat, because the messages disappear, so the drug dealers cannot be traced. And our teens and our young adults can literally order pills on Snapchat and it be delivered within minutes. And that's crazy. And then it's deleted, so the drug dealer's never caught. So Clyde, Texas, we think, okay, Abilene has a problem. Texas has a problem, but not Clyde. We don't have a problem here. This was an article that was released the beginning of August this year, 2022, just less than 2 weeks before school started. There was a drug bust at a house in Clyde, and these are the items that were removed. All these bags right here that are prepackaged, ready to be sold, all of those pills tested positive for fentanyl. This was just a few blocks from the junior high. Those pills right there could have been sold to our kids. It is here, y'all. It is in Clyde, America. We can't pretend like it's not around us. It's here, and we've got to do something about it, and we have to protect our community and ourselves and our children. And education is huge because our kids don't realize this. After talking to some of the high school students and them asking questions, I was really shocked that they didn't know about fentanyl being laced in pills and in vapes and illegal drugs. Like, most of them asked me, what is fentanyl? They had no idea. They had no idea about the deaths. So speaking of the deaths, this statistic is extremely shocking. For the first time ever in the United States, fentanyl is now the number 1 cause of death for people aged 18 to 45 in the U.S. Number 1 cause. That means more people die from fentanyl poisoning than from car accidents, suicide, gun violence, heart attacks, strokes, any medical problems. Fentanyl is the number 1 cause of death. How crazy is that? That's pretty shocking to me. And if you look at this graph, this number right here is 2020, 91,799 deaths. As I said before, we are now up to over 106,000 in the last 12 months. This quote to me is really important, and it really sticks out. Illicit fentanyl is devastating every socioeconomic class. If you think illicit fentanyl cannot touch your family, we urge you to think again. That's what's so crazy about this drug is people aren't necessarily hooked on it or addicted to drugs. It's happening to people that maybe have taken one pill for the first time ever, or maybe they've taken a couple pills over their life, or maybe they do have an addiction. But it's really happening to, I don't want to say normal people, but people that maybe we wouldn't normally view as taking a drug or doing a drug. And our problem is that we think, oh, my kid would never do that. My kid's in sports. My kid is in band. My kid is in theater. My kid is highly involved. They have straight A's. There is no way that my kid would do this. I don't even have to worry about it. I don't have to tell them about it. Well, guess what? It's not true. There are so many normal teenagers that have died from this.
We have new details surrounding Longhorn linebacker Jake Ellinger's tragic death back in May. In a statement, the Ellinger family says Jake was a victim of an accidental overdose of what was believed to be Xanax laced with toxic drugs, including fentanyl. Jake's family says the spread of counterfeit pills is a real issue in our country. They felt it was important to share these details to possibly prevent other families from also tragically losing a loved one.
So this is Jake Ellinger, 20-year-old UT linebacker. He was not a druggie. He was not addicted to drugs. He was not one that took drugs. He took one Xanax one night and never woke up again. And you can see, like, this picture looks like the nice normal family. And that's not who you would normally expect to die from that. So this story comes from Sour Lake, Texas. Population is 1,800, so a little bit more than half the size of Clyde. They're a star football player that played for them, now 21 years old and playing for Rice University. This is his story.
Right now at 10, mysterious death. A Rice University football player found dead in his apartment. How those who knew him are remembering him.
Tonight, hundreds are mourning the death and celebrating the life of a Southeast Texas football star.
It was a funeral service for 21-year-old Blaine Padgett. The former Hardin-Jefferson student athlete was found dead in his sleep at his Houston apartment last week.
More difficult than I could have imagined. This is my son we're talking about. You know, that this has happened to. He made the choice to take a pill from someone, but he did not choose to die from it.
That quote right there from his mom is so true. We don't always make the smartest decisions as teenagers and young adults. And us as parents, we try to educate our kids as much as we can to help them and guide them and to help them make those right decisions. But ultimately, they're going to make those decisions on their own. If Blaine had known that there was a chance that that pill he took had fentanyl in it and would have killed him, would he have taken that? And that's what my goal is to educate our kids and just pray and hope that them having the knowledge that this could happen to them, that this could be in that illicit pill that they're taking, might make them think twice about it. So why is fentanyl threatening our youth? There's lots of reasons, and we may not know every reason, but one of the biggest ones right now, I think, is their coping mechanism. These teenagers and young adults went through COVID, and it affected them in a way that none of us realized. It affected mental health so much, that isolation and learning to cope, and they may have looked at us as their parents or adults in their life and may have seen that we were having stressors, whether it was financial stressors, work stressors, mental health stressors ourselves, or even physical health stressors. And they didn't want to come to us and put more on us. They decided to try to cope with it on their own. Sometimes that coping mechanism is self-medicating. Things like Xanax were very popular over during that COVID pandemic when those numbers were really high. Xanax is an anti-anxiety drug that is prescribed legally quite often. However, We know that if you are buying Xanax illegally or on social media, it's probably in illicit form, and there's a really good chance that it could contain fentanyl. We know that peer pressure has been around for a long, long time, and peer pressure is always going to be one of those reasons that kids may or may not do something. And we'll continue to educate them and continue to tell them you don't have to go with peer pressure, but it is one of those main reasons. Um, you know, they may have tried a true oxycodone or hydrocodone pill and realized that they like that feeling of euphoria, of feeling like there wasn't a care in the world. They were in their own world. And if they were depressed or they were having coping problems with COVID or friends or isolation, any of those things, it took them out of that. So, because of that, they continued to purchase these pills. And although maybe the first 5 pills they took didn't hurt them because they didn't have a large amount of fentanyl, maybe that next pill has too much and could kill them. It's kind of crazy that our kids have such easy access to buy pills and other drugs. Almost all teens and young adults have phones. Almost all have social media accounts. And as I said before, I can admit I do not know how to use Snapchat. I don't have a TikTok. I used to think I was pretty tech savvy, computer savvy, but definitely now, feeling my age when I realized I cannot work those. But it's also scary because it also makes it more difficult for me to know exactly what my kids are doing on there. Um, so they have quick access. And like I said before, it's like ordering a pizza. They can get on Snapchat and order a hydrocodone and it be delivered to them within minutes. The biggest threat that fentanyl has towards our youth is the knowledge. And I've said this already multiple times today, and I know it, but our kids may not realize that these pills can be fake. They don't know that they contain fentanyl. They don't even know what fentanyl is. That's why we've got to educate them. And they don't know what to do if their best friend next to them did take something and was experiencing an overdose. What do they do? If they call the police or their parents or 911, are they going to get in trouble because there's a drug? We've got to teach them, unfortunately, not only to protect themselves, but how to respond if there was someone around us that had an overdose. So Narcan is the opioid antagonist that I was talking about earlier. It's a reversal drug. It is now more widely available. There are actually places, pharmacies, that you can get it without a prescription. So if you live with somebody or around somebody that you know has an addiction to opioids or heroin, anything like that, it's not a bad idea to have this. This is a nasal spray. You can get an injection or nasal spray. It's 1 dose. It has been made super simple to use for anybody, not just medical. This reverses almost immediately. And the reason that this is so important is that brain damage can actually occur after 4 minutes without breathing. And then death can actually occur 4 to 6 minutes after that. And fentanyl is so potent that it happens so fast. And the majority of people that do die for it stop breathing so quickly. In a suburban setting, it takes about 7 minutes for EMT to arrive. So by the time you get to that 7 minutes, that person could be dead. So important. If you feel comfortable carrying Narcan, I would carry it. All the schools in our campuses carry it. We have it available. It goes on any trips that we take. And that's not just for students, y'all. That's for visitors, parents, staff. I mean, we have to think of everybody because it's such an epidemic. This next video is pretty graphic. And this also shows why having Narcan available is so important.
What is the address of your emergency?
Please come now. My daughter's unconscious.
It's the sound of sheer panic.
How old is she?
16. Sophia! Sophia! She's on her back. Please hurry.
Got them on the way.
It was a quiet afternoon near Boulder, Colorado, when Ryan Christoph finds his then 16-year-old daughter, Sophia, barely breathing.
I'm pushing on her chest, and it's making some noise, but she's unconscious.
Okay,
And
is she laying flat on her back?
Blue. She's on her back on her bed.
Listen carefully, and I'm going to tell you how to do chest compressions.
Within minutes, Sergeant David Cohen with the Lafayette, Colorado Police Department pulls up.
I'm in the count with you, okay? So try and go with the pace I'm counting, okay? Keep up with that pace if you can, okay?
I'm responding with an AED.
Hold on, I think it might be, hold on. Up here, up here!
Upstairs?
Cohen sprinting up the stairs and into Sophia's bedroom.
What is her name?
Sophia!
Let me take over CPR. Sir, does she use narcotics?
Sophia's father telling him he doesn't think so. He only knows of her smoking a little weed. But Officer Cohen's experience told him otherwise.
Lincoln 21, slight pulse and Narcan administered.
As the approaching ambulance gets closer, the Narcan kicks in.
She breathing? She's breathing, yes, sir.
Sophia had taken a Percocet that came from a drug dealer, not knowing it was laced with fentanyl, a synthetic opioid used to treat severe pain that is 50 times more powerful than heroin.
The interview with Sophia, she actually ended up saying that what she took was half a Percocet, half of a pill, and that happened. So we talked about Snapchat and how it's being sold on social media sites, and that just can be delivered as easily as getting a pizza. There's a campaign right now going on called Gone in a Snap. And like this picture right here, these are all pictures of people that purchased illicit pills off Snapchat that were laced with fentanyl and died. Kind of a crazy statistic is that it's estimated that 40% of pills, so every 4 out of 10 pills sold on Snapchat contain a lethal amount of fentanyl. Not contain fentanyl, contain a lethal amount. And that lethal amount can be different for everybody depending on tolerance and size. What do we tell our kids? Okay, so we have all this new information. What do we tell them? So we need to explain to them what fentanyl is, that it can be in these pills, and the amount of fentanyl in one pill can be different than the next one. So even if they think, oh, okay, since this might have fentanyl, we'll just split it in half and then we're good. It is not always a safe option because all the fentanyl could be in one half of the pill. Every pill is different. So even if one pill seems safe, so even if they took a hydrocodone the day before and nothing happened, the next one they take could kill them. We need to teach our kids that all pills offered are fake and may contain fentanyl. You can't smell fentanyl. You can't taste fentanyl. You can't even tell if a pill is fake anymore by just looking at it. Don't take any medication or any pills that you get from anybody except from your parents, doctor, pharmacist. Your school nurse is fine, but our kids need to know that if they decide to purchase pills online or social media, they're not safe. Even our little kids, like our elementary age kids, intermediate age kids, we don't need to necessarily go into detail about what fentanyl is, but from a young age, we need to start teaching them, don't take medication that's not yours. If your friend gives you medicine or candy, you don't know where it's from, don't take it. Those are things that we can teach our kids. Don't eat stuff that you found on the ground. Teaching them that and getting that through their head at a young age is going to be very important to hopefully stop this upward trend. If you or someone around you takes an illegal pill, you need to know how to recognize an opioid overdose. This is something we need to teach our kids, because although maybe we've taught our kids not to do that, their friends' parents may not have told them. Their friends may not have any idea, or they may have an idea and decide to go ahead and take a pill anyways. Our children need to know how to react if someone around them overdosed. They need to know symptoms like shallow breathing or no breathing, decreased heart rate, unconscious. And our kids need to also have access to Narcan. Narcan's that reversal drug we talked about. They need to know where they can get it, how to use it, and they need to know it's okay for them to use. One thing about Narcan that I really want to reiterate to everybody is that if someone is unconscious and you suspect an opioid overdose, you need to use the Narcan. If it turns out that maybe they hadn't taken any opioids, maybe they really truly were having a heart attack or something else was going on, that Narcan that you gave to them is not going to hurt them. It does not have any negative effects on somebody that's not on opioids. So you don't have to worry about harming somebody if you're not 100% sure. If it's available and you even have an inkling that someone could have possibly taken opioids or overdosed, you need to give it. You could save their life. Narcan is actually really easy to get a hold of now. And it's, again, just so important that we have this available everywhere. It could save someone's life. It could give them another chance. I mean, we've all made mistakes in our life. And we know our kids are going to make mistakes, but we don't want them to die from those mistakes. So here's just a handful of fentanyl facts for you to know, or if you are educating family members, community members, your children, our teens. So 2 milligrams of fentanyl can cause sudden death. It can be a lethal dose. So the onset of poisoning that fentanyl causes occurs within seconds. It occurs so much faster than even heroin. Again, that's why we need to have that Narcan ready. So I talked about before that drug cartels in Mexico, China, and even Canada are producing the fentanyl, bringing it into the United States. We know now that China and Mexican cartels are laundering trillions of dollars that are made just from the sale of fentanyl. Every dose taken of fentanyl is like playing Russian roulette. I mean, just think about that. The DEA reports that 40% of counterfeit pills, 4 out of 10 counterfeit pills manufactured with fentanyl are deadly. That means all 10 of them have fentanyl in them. But we're guessing a little bit less than half are going to have a lethal dose. But a lethal dose for you may not be the same as a lethal dose for me, or the same as a lethal dose for our 120-pound 15-year-old. So there's actually like precursor chemicals, fentanyl analogs, what they're called. So these are actually used by the drug cartel in the labs to strengthen the drug potency because it's already so potent, but they want to make it even more potent. So they make more money, less fentanyl in it, and the people still get their high. So carfentanil is actually a fentanyl analog that can kill 10 times faster than base fentanyl. 10 times faster. Carfentanil is also known as the elephant tranquilizer, if you've heard of it. So we talked about the death rates with fentanyl and how many people in the United States died from fentanyl poisoning over the last 12 months in our statistics. But what's crazy is that the fentanyl fatalities have increased by about 50% in the last 12 months. but the teen death rate of fentanyl overdose is up by 94%. Y'all, 94%. These are our kids, our neighbors, our nieces, our nephews, our grandchildren. Teen deaths up by 94%. We know that fentanyl is deadly. It's about 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, more potent than heroin. It can be mixed with heroin. It can be mixed with cocaine. The user, the buyer, probably doesn't have any idea that they're consuming anything with fentanyl in it. So we talked about before that fentanyl is an opioid. That is a central nervous system depressant, CNS depressant. That's what the majority of pain meds are. What that means is our central nervous system tells our body when to take a breath, when to breathe, when our heart beats. And so if that central nervous system becomes depressed, our brain is not telling our body when to take a breath or when our heart needs to pump. So basically, death by fentanyl is like suffocation. Shuts down your neurological system, shuts down your respiratory system. And as I said before, it can kill you so quickly within minutes or even seconds. The most important thing that I really want everybody to get out of this is the stereotypes. The unsuspecting people die from fentanyl poisoning daily. There's no age restriction. There's no socioeconomic boundaries for who fentanyl kills. Today, fentanyl is killing people of all ages, all socioeconomic, toddlers, youth, teens, young adults, middle-aged seniors. They are dying from fentanyl poisoning. Y'all may have seen this on the news recently, and this is something that's fairly new, but I thought it was important to include this on this presentation. Rainbow fentanyl. So rainbow fentanyl was first reported to be seized by DEA in February of 2022. Basically, it is fentanyl that's coming in these bright colors, becomes more attractive to junior high kids, to high school kids. Since February, after seizing it, DEA has now seized it in 21 states. That is how fast it's moving. So this picture up here at the top, this is talking about a news story in Connecticut. This was just this last week. So there was a drug bust that somebody had this rainbow fentanyl, and they were transporting this rainbow fentanyl in boxes that said Nerds and Skittles on them. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I know that my kids, if they found an unopened box of Nerds like that, or unopened box of Skittles or bag of Skittles, they would just think they won the lottery. And especially our little kids, like a lot of them do not have the sense to say, oh, this was found on the ground, we should probably not open it. But it's something that we need to teach them. If, for example, somebody was transporting these drugs, in the Nerds bags or in the Skittles bags, and they saw a police car behind them, they were getting pulled over, they may decide that they're going to throw those boxes out the window. They're going to get rid of them before that police officer walks up. So they've thrown these boxes of basically what looks like unopened candy out the window. Well, we got to worry that our kids are going to pick that up and eat them. We've got to teach them, don't eat candy that wasn't given to you or purchased by you from a store. Don't eat boxes of candy that were found on the side of the road. We just don't know. And it's really scary, and it's changing every day. But these drug cartels are being more and more creative on how to get this drug into the United States and to our kids. That's the end of our presentation. I am always available to answer any questions that you may have, any comments. If you'd like any further detail about any information shared, or you just want to discuss it, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anybody about this. And again, I'm just going to reiterate one more time to everybody that fentanyl poisoning can happen to anybody. Every 9 seconds, somebody's dying from fentanyl poisoning. I don't want it to be our kids. I don't want it to be our community. I don't want it to be any of our students. I love each and every one of y'all's kids here. They mean the world to me. I did not realize when I came to work here for the school how much I would love these kids and care about them. And it terrifies me to think that something could happen to them. And so we've got to educate them, y'all. We're the parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters. We're the community members. We got to teach our kids these things. Thank you for your time. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you.